I went through the major recessions of the last 80 years, and there are patterns that helped people get through them in better shape. With everything happening on a global scale, the risk of a recession has gone up.
Oh no!
Obviously, recessions suck, but they're also an economic cycle that has repeated itself throughout history. And in this video, I want to give you an overview of how to spot them, how to protect yourself, and how to turn them to your advantage. So, let's not waste any more time and let's get into it. Part 1. What is a recession and how to recognize it? The official definition of recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. But the problem is that by the time someone officially declares we're in a recession, it's already been happening for months. It's like a weather app that tells you it's raining while you're already soaking wet. So if you're waiting for CNN to announce it before you do anything, you've already missed the moment to prepare. The smart move is to look at what happens before it's officially announced. To get a clear picture of what's going on, there are a few key indicators we can look at that tell us how the economy is actually moving. The first one is called the yield curve. To understand what it is, imagine you're lending money to someone. If they pay you back in a month, the risk is low, so you don't ask for much interest. If they pay you back in 10 years, the risk is higher, and naturally, you want more in return. Now apply that same logic to the US government. When it needs money, it borrows from investors by issuing bonds called treasuries, some that mature in a few months, others in 10 or 30 years. The yield curve is simply a line that visually maps out those yields. On the horizontal axis, you have the maturities. On the vertical axis, the yields. Analysts pay closest attention to the relationship between the 2-year and the 10-year treasury, because historically, it's been the most accurate predictor. The curve can take 3 shapes, and each one tells you where we are in the economic cycle. When the curve slopes upward to the right, long-term yields are higher than short-term ones. That's a sign of an expanding economy. When it flattens out and goes horizontal, short and long-term yields start converging toward the same level, signaling a transition phase. When the curve inverts, meaning short-term bonds start yielding more than long-term ones, it means investors have lost confidence in the near term. They start piling into long-term bonds because they see them as safer. And that's when banks stop lending, draining liquidity out of the real economy. Over the last 50 years, every single time the curve has inverted, the economy paid the price. As of the time I'm recording this, the curve has re-steepened after a long period of inversion. And historically, that shift from inversion back to normal is often the most dangerous moment, because it means the damage that the curve warned about is starting to show up in the real economy. The second signal is consumer confidence. This metric measures how financially secure people feel, and the historical average of the index from 1952 to today sits at 84 points. For some context, in January 2000, at the peak of the dot-com bubble when everyone felt rich, it was at 112. During the 2008 financial crisis, it dropped to around 55. Right now, the index has hit 47.6, the lowest reading in the entire history of this measurement. Why does this matter so much? Because the American economy is driven roughly 70% by consumer spending. When people feel financially insecure, they put off non-essential purchases. That translates into lower revenue for businesses, which then slow down production and start thinking about layoffs. The third signal is the manufacturing PMI. This index measures whether factory activity is expanding or contracting compared to the previous month. Below 50 means they're pulling back. Above 50 means factories are ramping up. Right now, the PMI sits at around 52, which technically signals growth. However, that might not be because companies are actually producing more. It could be because they're stockpiling inventory out of fear of supply chain disruptions caused by global tensions. Keeping an eye on these signals gives you a solid read on where the economy is headed and helps make sure you're not caught off guard when things start moving in the wrong direction. Part 2. How to prepare. A recession lasts an average of about 10 months, but the financial damage it leaves behind can take years to recover from. How you come out of it depends on what you built before it arrived. There are 4 essential steps that, taken together, put you in a solid position no matter what happens. The first one is to increase your cash flow. Cash flow is the money moving in and out of your life every month. To increase it, you basically have 2 options. Well, 3 if you count winning the lottery. But yeah, let's scratch that one. The first option is adding income streams. The fastest way is to monetize a skill you already have: tutoring, freelance work, things you can start today with zero upfront investment. If you want something more structured for the long run, you can build a side hustle that grows alongside you and eventually becomes your main gig. Or invest in stocks and bonds that pay regular dividends. But you will need some capital to get started. Having multiple income streams is always the smarter play, because if a recession hits one of them, you're not going down with it. The second option to increase your cash flow is to reduce your expenses. Step 2. Build an emergency fund. The standard advice you'll find everywhere is to save at least 3 months of expenses, and that's designed for a job loss in a normal market. During a recession, the job hunt can take much longer, so the real target is between 6 and 9 months of fixed costs. Fixed costs means all the essential living expenses you can't cut out. And this money cannot sit in an investment portfolio. If the market drops 40% right when you need cash, you'll be forced to sell at a loss just to cover your day-to-day expenses. And you don't want that. Step 3. Hedge against inflation. When governments respond to an economic crisis, the most common move is to print money and inject liquidity into the system. The problem is, the more money enters circulation, the higher inflation climbs, and the higher inflation climbs, the more your purchasing power erodes. Hard assets are a great way to protect yourself. Gold, for example, is the most time-tested tool for preserving wealth over the long term, holding its value for over 50 years. Some precious metals like silver or platinum operate on a different logic than gold. They have a strong industrial component, so during a recession, as industrial production slows, their prices tend to drop. Step 4. Develop recession-proof skills. A recession reshapes the job market fast. Generic roles that anyone can fill get cut first, but someone with a specific and immediately applicable skill is much harder to replace because the market still needs that skill regardless of how the economy is doing. That translates into 2 real advantages: more job security during layoff cycles and more negotiating leverage when it comes to salary. If you run a business, think about developing a skill that's directly tied to what you're already building. Here's a list of skills that are particularly valuable during a crisis. Part 3. Making money. Recessions always follow the same script. People panic, sell everything out of fear, and that's when the real opportunities open up. If we look at the last few recessions, we can see that the market has always come back. In 2009, the market crashed 57%, but over the next 5 years, it climbed plus 134%. During the pandemic, the market dropped 34% in less than a month, and fully recovered within 11 months. This tells us that recessions are a cycle, and those who kept buying while everyone else was panic selling turned the worst moment in the market into their best entry point. So let's look at 2 areas that have historically held their ground, even grown when everything else was falling apart. Defensive sectors. Not every company takes the same hit when times get tough. Some lose a huge chunk of their value because their business depends directly on consumer spending. But there are sectors that hold steady revenue during a recession because they sell things people need regardless of what the market is doing. What you see here are the historically strongest defensive sectors. To get exposure to these sectors, there are generally 2 ways to do it. The first is dividend stocks, shares in individual, well-established companies in these markets. They come with higher earning potential, but also higher risk, since everything depends on how that single company performs. The second option is an ETF, which bundles dozens of these companies into a single purchase, giving you broad exposure across the entire sector at once. Real estate and farmland. It might sound counterintuitive, but real estate doesn't always lose value in a recession. If we look at the Case-Shiller Index, which tracks how US home prices have shifted through the years, we can see that the real estate market doesn't behave the same way in every recession. If the crisis originates in the housing market itself, like in 2008, prices crash. But if the crisis comes from the broader economy or an external shock, like in 2020, prices can stay flat or even rise in some cases. And even if prices do drop, a property keeps generating rental income every single month. People always need a place to sleep. Farmland is another rock-solid asset to have in your corner. From 1950 to 2025, its value has risen almost without interruption, from $750 per acre all the way up to $4,350 today. The only real exception was the 1980s, when a combination of high interest rates and falling agricultural prices caused land values to drop. But outside of that period, the trend has been consistently upward. And the reason is simple. Farmland value doesn't move in lockstep with the stock market, and people will always need to eat. Getting exposure to these assets comes down to two paths. The first is direct ownership. The second is REITs, publicly traded funds that own real estate or land and distribute dividends to shareholders. Both have their pros and cons, and the right choice depends on your risk tolerance and how much capital you're working with. Part 4. Find business opportunities. Recessions reshape consumer behavior by changing the way people meet their needs. Someone who used to eat out 3 times a week starts cooking at home. Someone who used to buy new clothes starts shopping secondhand. The need stays exactly the same. What changes is how people choose to meet it. And that's precisely where opportunities are born. A market that used to work one way stops working, and whoever finds a cheaper, simpler, or more accessible way to deliver the same result captures an enormous share of that market. Every recession creates the same problems, and each one of them is an opening for a business. A clear example is Groupon. The company launched right in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis. On one side, consumers looked for deals wherever they could find them. On the other, shops and restaurants had half-empty venues. Groupon brought those two halves of the market together, solving both problems at once. And within 2 years, it reached a valuation of over $1 billion. I won't spend too long on this, because I've already made a video that can give you some solid ideas to work with. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, and I'll see you in the next one.